How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys, Alex and Ryan. Today, I want to talk about Nestor Cortes and how he's had a kind of a up and down start to his 2023 season. Lately, if you've been keeping a close eye on Nestor, he hasn't been particularly good. Now, he is coming off, and I do want to acknowledge his last performance, 5 innings, 2 earned runs allowed. So, it's not bad. You're talking about, like a 3 ERA. So, it's certainly something to be happy about, right? His last start against Toronto was very solid, but before then, not so good. He gave up 5 earned runs in his first 3 starts and 23 earned runs in his last 6. So clearly he's had a bit of an issue. We want to take a look at what's kind of going on, why we think he can get back to his normal shape, but why he's been a bit of a liability. And this starting rotation simply can't afford to have Nestor Cortes not be the 2022 version of himself. We need him to be elite. We need him to pick it up. We need him to be our primary lefty guy when Carlos Rodon, whenever he comes back, if he even does come back, he's got to be that kind of versatile, diverse piece in this starting rotation that picks us up and can be that number 2 or at least that number 3 behind Sevy and Garrett Cole. But, we're going to dive into his pitch makeup. We're going to dive into what's kind of going on with some of those pitches, the movement, and there are some startling stats and metrics that we do want to hit on and kind of figure out what's going on there. But Ryan, before we dive into things, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing well. The Yankees are playing good baseball, and, kind of a microcosm of that has been their offense, right? They finally got healthy and things have turned around, but it feels like the starting rotations remained a little bit odd. Garrett Cole's been, pitching at an all-star caliber level, and an all-star Cy Young caliber. I don't want to undersell that. And Luis Severino coming back is obviously huge, but Nestor Cortes having a little bit of a rough patch, in his last couple of outings, not including his last one. He was really strong in his Toronto start, but he was in that weird funk, right? Texas and Tampa, those 2 starts went south very quickly. That's not something you're typically accustomed to from Nestor. Nestor is someone who's kind of been able to pitch out of jams in the past. He's been probably the Yankees' best starter from 2021 to 2022, and that's acknowledging the fact that Garrett Cole's been really good since then. But Nestor's been, I think it's like a 2-something ERA in that time span. So this is definitely weird. Did you expect that Nestor was going to be a little bit worse than last year? Probably. There's no one who's, I think, a true talent 2.4 ERA guy. But this is startling. So, he's headed in the right direction after that Toronto start. You hope he can continue to build off of that. But, there are definitely some concerns with command, right? He's gotten worse in that regard. His strikeouts are down from last year. It feels like he's not as aggressive in the strike zone. There are some outings where, he'll run into trouble and he'll, put himself into a jam. Again, most notably in that, in that Tampa and Texas start. In the 5th inning against Tampa, he just pitches himself into trouble. He walks a few guys, gives up the grand slam, and now you go from, hey, the dude's having a good outing to, now he's got 6 runs tagged on him. Against Texas in that 1st inning, he was walking the ballpark, and they made him pay. He gave up 3 home runs in that outing. One of those, the grand slam in the 1st inning. He's getting hit a little bit harder than he was last year. His barrel rate's up, and his hard hit rate is up. All those numbers, not good things, of course. And looking towards the future here, you want Nestor to continue to get better. You want Nestor to continue to find his stride. But definitely not to start looking for from Nestor. And from a command basis, are command struggles as discouraging as Stuff's struggles? No. I'd rather Nestor struggle with command than have deteriorating Stuff, because you feel like command is something he can get on track. But nevertheless, still disappointing start for Nestor. I'm not in the panic mode yet. I don't think either of us are pressing the panic button yet, but just more so like, hey, he's not pitching too well and he's got to start turning things around, or else, then you start pressing panic buttons. So, I think kind of right now, if there was like a out of 10, how worried am I about Nestor? I'm about at like a 3 or a 4. I'm not too worried, but I'm like, hey, the start to the season has not been very good. And if I think he pushed it down a little bit after the Toronto start. If he builds another good start, I think his next start's against Baltimore in this series, then now you'll start feeling like, all right, he's headed in the right direction. That first part of the season was just a rough patch. So, hopefully that's all it is, just a rough patch, but it's still something to note.
Yeah, look, the thing is, if Nestor Cortes struggles, the Yankees are forced to go out and acquire a starting pitcher. I know a couple of reports came out this morning. I wrote something on it. Lucas Giolito, I don't know exactly how to say his last name. Giolito, yeah. So the White Sox may be cleaning house, and there's an opportunity that the Yankees may be intrigued by his services. Reliable, 28 years old, healthy, someone who can come in at least supplement maybe a back-end rotation spot. The Yankees may be forced into a move like that. That may not cost them an arm and a leg not that he would be cheap, but he might be cheaper than Corbin Burns. I know some people have raised his name in Twitter circles lately. But I'll tell you what, Nestor Cortez, we know how good he is. We're optimistic. We think he can return back to his normal self. But I do want to give some interesting stats to you guys on kind of what's happened lately in his game, right? So Cortez, right now, coming off a really good 2022 season, 2.44 ERA, 3.63 xFIP, 9.27 strikeouts per nine over 158 innings, right? He's 28 years old. The guy's still young. This year, the 5.20 ERA stands out. The 5 xFIP is not so good. The strikeouts right around 9 Ks per nine, which is similar to what he had last year. The margin for error, it's nothing to be concerned about. But he's walking 2.61 batters per nine, which is a little bit of an increase, and he's giving up far more home runs. So that's kind of the problem. He's giving up 50% more home runs this season than he did last year. The sample size is small, so it could decrease, and it probably will as the season continues. But he's using his four-seam fastball about 51.4% of the time, his cutter 30.3% of the time, and his sweeper 12.4% of the time. So you're looking at that increase in four-seam fastball by 7% this year, and that's coming straight from his sweeper. And, Ryan and I discussed this earlier. His sweeper has been really bad this season, and that's kind of what's been standing out for us in the sense that opposing batters are hitting 316 against it with a 684 slugging percentage. So, compared to his fastball, they're only hitting 231. So his cutter, that's what kind of his cutter was the pitch last year that set up the strikeouts. It was one of those pitches that got a lot of movement. It looks like a fastball coming in, but the horizontal movement just makes it dip out of the strike zone or dip right below bats. And it was able to get some strikes on the board here. Last year, he generated 120% more horizontal movement with his cutter. This year, he's only generating 76% more horizontal breaks. So you're looking at 44% decrease in horizontal movement, Ryan. Why do you think that is? I feel like that type of movement doesn't disappear overnight. Is it the baseball? Is it, what's going on there? Because I feel like that's a big enough margin that we're like, okay, like there's something wrong there, right?
Yeah, no, so, we're looking at movement versus average, right? League trends will affect that. So, this year, it seems as if more guys are throwing cutters at that velocity with more movement. And perhaps that's making Nestor's cutter a little less effective compared to the league average. And if you guys remember last year, that fastball cutter, really, that's what set up Nestor Cortez. Nestor Cortez was able to just kind of use those two pitches, mix in a changeup or a sweeper here and there. But those are really the two pitches that allowed him to be so dominant. So, whether it's a league-wide trend that more guys are using cutters or more guys are generating similar movement, if not more movement on their cutter, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. And as for the sweeper, as a whole, sweepers have been getting hit more across the league, right? If we look at strikeout percentage last year, it was 31%. WOBA last year, it was 253. This year, batters are striking out 29.4% of the time and have a 279 WOBA against. Now, that may not seem like a massive difference, but we're talking about a league-wide trend. WOBA going up by nearly 20 points and strikeout percentage going down 2% is still notable. So, not that the sweeper is a bad pitch or anything like that. The sweeper is still, not his sweeper in particular, but like league-wide sweepers are still a pretty good pitch. But as a whole, when they're getting hit more, it's because batters are seeing them more, right? Like the sweeper is kind of a new pitch or a new like trendy pitch. Everyone's trying to throw a sweeper now, right? Michael King was one of the first guys in the Yankees that I can remember, really using that sweeper and just, leaning all the way into it. Kind of his own kind of take on the Kluber ball. I don't know if you guys remember when Kluber was here, but that did play an influence on Michael King's breaking ball. Some notable guys with sweepers in the Yankees as well. You go Clark Schmidt, Nestor Cortez, of course, Lucas Litke when he was here for a while had a sweeper. The sweeper is becoming more popular, but as it becomes more popular, teams are preparing better for it. There's more data available on it. Guys are seeing it more. They're getting a little more comfortable with it. So, it's one of those things where it just feels like, not that the league is caught up to the pitch to the point where the pitch is bad or not serviceable, but to the point where you can't just say, all right, I have a sweeper now, and I'm just going to throw it, and batters don't really know what to do with it, right? It's a familiar pitch now, and it's something that Nestor's going to have to catch up to in terms of trends. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this. You referenced this a little bit earlier, but he's really relying on that four-seam fastball, and that's really the one pitch that's remained, despite all the, all the funks, despite all the command issues, Nestor Cortez's four-seam fastball is still really good, and I think that's the one thing that I'm going to hang my hat on and say that's why I'm not too concerned, because I feel like because the four-seam fastball is still there, the cutter will fall into place, that pitch will get better. If you look at that Toronto start, the home run he gave up to Bichette, that ball's in at Bichette's hands. Bichette just did an excellent job hitting that pitch. That's not even a poorly placed cutter. I think that start really was a great opportunity for him to, show off that he's still Nestor Cortez, he's still Nasty Nestor, and he did, right? That's a Toronto lineup that, has feasted off of the lefties. They're very right-handed. You think Vlad, you think Matt Chapman, you think Bo Bichette, George Springer. They got a lot of right-handed bats, and in that ballpark, it's a very tough ballpark to try to, keep the ball in the ballpark. The Yankees were able to take advantage of that. Toronto, unfortunately for them, was not able to. But Nestor Cortez being able to do that against that Toronto lineup gives me faith that, he still has that in him. Is he going to finish the year with a 2.44 ERA? Again, no. But, last year we actually did see a similar stretch of starts where Nestor Cortez put up pretty similarly, bad numbers, right? If we look at a stretch between June 8th and July 8th, which is a month, in 6 starts, he had a 5.34 ERA, a 6.04 FIP, allowed 2.83 home runs per 9. It was actually an outing against Cincinnati, followed by an outing with Baltimore, that he was able to really put things together and get himself back on track. And, at that time, Nestor Cortez was a little bit less of an established starter, so there was a little more concern that he could have been, quote-unquote, figured out. And, now that he's a little bit more seasoned as a veteran, he knows kind of his struggles when he's going right, when he's not going right. I think that he'll continue to get better. There are some discussions about whether the pitch clock is affecting his ability to, have stamina throughout a game. People forget, he didn't have a normal spring training, right? He was injured for most of spring training, didn't get the same way to build up that other guys did. And I think that that's playing a role in, some of the fatigue we're seeing later on in outings. If you look at third time through the order, he's been terrible. I think that the weird start to the season, on top of the fact that Nestor Cortez, the cutter again, and the cutter has probably been a pitch that's been used more across the league. And again, the sweeper's been figured out a little bit more across the league. Just a lot of things not playing into Nestor Cortez's favor. But, I think he's more comfortable now. I think he's finally finding his stride. And if you look at his numbers, and I kind of referenced this before our podcast, it was really those 2 starts against the Rangers and the Rays that ruined his stats, right? Almost 50% of his earned runs came in those 2 outings, right? Before that, he had a sub 3.5 ERA on the season, and then in his recent outing against the Blue Jays, 3 ERA. If you subtract those 2 starts, he's a 3 ERA pitcher, right? Which isn't Nestor from last year, but still pretty good. And you can't just take away when a pitcher is bad and say, all right, you don't have to be worried about them. But it's more so me saying that it's not consistently terrible. It's just 2 atrocious starts. So I think he's due for some better luck. I think he's due to get, going a little bit of a run here. And if he can do so, especially at this stretch of the season, the Yankees are going to be playing teams like the Red Sox, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Orioles. These are important starts. These are important games, and these are good lineups. And if he can put together big outings against these guys and help the Yankees, collect some wins, the Yankees are only 6.5 games, or no, they're 6.5 or 5.5 games back at Tampa. The division's not out of reach anymore. So, you have a good stretch of games here. You play some competitive baseball, and you put yourself in a situation where you'll be fighting with the Rays for the AL East all summer.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the reality is the Yankees are heating up. They're trending up. They're doing well. They're winning games. Aaron Judge is looking like his MVP form again. The starting rotation's looking better with Severino back in the mix. Eventually, you get Herman back. And left field, the outfield with Judge and Bader is tremendous. Left field, of course, you can supplement that. Greg Allen has a 1,000 WRC plus right now, so he's kicking ass. Obviously, that'll come back down to earth, as we know. But you know what? Play the hot hand in left field for now. We don't need to make any premature decisions. We talked about Josh Donaldson yesterday. We don't know what they're going to do with him. You're going to get Stanton back, one of the best sluggers in the game. So right now, I feel like the Yankees are trending up. Maybe you get Tommy Kahnle back in a week or so, and we get some reinforcements here as we get a little bit healthier. Maybe Rodon. We'll see what happens. We're still hoping for the best there. But I have to say, right now, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I'm a little bit more confident. We needed the 2 days of rest. Judge definitely needed the 2 days of rest, so that was very good for him. Of course, we start another series tonight. With Garrett Cole on the mound, so we're excited. But my guys, my friends, I'd love to hear your opinions below on Nestor Cortez. If you are optimistic, we both are. We think he's going to make a comeback. I think more so it's just some anomalies and some arbitrary variables affecting him, just some location things, working his way into the season, maybe just adjusting a couple things here and there. But we're very excited about his upcoming rest of the campaign for Nestor Cortez. So I'd love to hear your perspectives, as always, on that side of things. But make sure to like and subscribe. Love it. Appreciate you guys. As always, leave a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify if you are so kind. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.